Michael, and welcome to Beyond the Screenplay's What We're Watching, our podcast where we watch a television series week by week. Today we're talking about The Last of Us, created by Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann, specifically Season 2, Episode 4, titled Day 1, available on HBO Max. I'm joined by the Beyond the Screenplay team, Trisha Rand.
Hello, everyone.
Brian Bittner.
Hello.
And Alex Calleros.
Hi.
All right, so to jump in, Day 1, we got to Seattle, Day 1. That title that popped up on screen will be familiar to game players. It certainly took me back seeing those words. I want to talk about Ellie and Dina, because now I think enough has happened in the show that can unlock some conversations about differences between the game and the show, and when and where certain things happen that I think will reveal some of the writing strategy that is being deployed here that I think is really interesting. And we talked in the last episode about the engine of the show changing. This was the first episode driving around with the new engine. Overall, I felt pretty good about it. There were definitely some bumps, but I was compelled, enjoying myself. And there were just some changes that were great, some changes that were not as great. But overall, it was an interesting first foray into Seattle with Ellie and Dina as our main people. Still no, we haven't seen Abby. We haven't seen Joel. The idea of nonlinear storytelling is clearly part of the vernacular, right? We get introduced to the Jeffrey Wright character, Isaac, via a flashback. It's like, we know they do these things, but we haven't done any of that yet. So interesting, focusing on Dina and Ellie, and starting to set up the world of Seattle. So, like I said, I want to talk about the changes of Dina and Ellie's arc and when and where that happened. But first, I want to hear what you guys thought of this. Alex, what were your thoughts on this episode?
My overall thought was just kind of, yay, I'm happy, because I was worried last week, honestly. Last week's episode, I think, was a necessary breather, but I wasn't feeling myself hooked the way that I was hooked at the first episode of this season, where it's like, okay, I'm in good hands. I trust these creators. They know what they're doing. I can sit back and relax. I wasn't relaxed anymore. I was getting nervous. I was like, uh-oh. This episode, I felt like I could sink back into that. Okay, I can sit back and relax. They know what they're doing. I'm hooked again. And I think a lot of it is because of really interesting choices like that cold open with Jeffrey Wright's character, Isaac. That's just a really good scene. And I love when Craig Mazin just does really good scenes where you introduce this scenario. There's these guys in this truck. They're set up as awful people, essentially. Jeffrey Wright is their commander. And then this reversal happens, and we see this is his initiation into kind of joining the resistance in Seattle. And I think Craig Mazin is really good at just capturing us with really interesting scenes, with really interesting characters, with great kind of scene structure and reversals. And I feel like we had a lot of those in this episode. Whereas, once again, the last episode felt like I didn't have a lot of great scenes. And anyway, so Seattle has become a lot more interesting. I'm hooked and remembering now more from the game about these factions and the themes, the very clear themes about cycles of violence. And I'm just hooked again. So I'm excited to see where they're going. We can talk a little bit about, game structure, show structure. We only have 3 episodes left this season. So it's going to be very fascinating to see where they leave us at the end, because they could go a whole lot of different directions with this game.
Yeah. No, me too. I thoroughly enjoyed this episode and was like, okay, cool. We're back doing some Last of Us stuff. Even just like you're saying, like cold opens with people that make us ask questions and then do cool reversals. And it's like, okay, cool. This is the Last of Us that I know. Trisha, what about you? What did you make of this episode?
Yeah, I'm somewhere in the middle where I felt the same kind of relief that you're describing, Alex, where I'm like, okay, yeah, sceney scenes, surprise Jeffrey Wright, I love all of this. The action sequences I thought in this were so well done and so tense. And I loved them in spite of, sort of only watching them through my fingers. And I just was like, I felt like I understood the trajectory a little bit more of the show, and they're building out the world of Seattle. And I'm like, okay, I feel a little bit more like on the rails, I guess, for lack of a better term. At the same time, some of my character motivation bumps that I was having in the last episode are not only not addressed here, but deepened and more confusing. Where there are some character decisions that I was really struggling with. It's like, especially the last one. It's like, at the very end of the episode, I was like, girl, you're going to bring your pregnant girlfriend into your big revenge scheme. This is it. This is what's going on. Yeah, I was, and even just like, I don't know, Alex, you identified, we can get back to all of this, but you identified when we were talking last about the last episode that you were missing like this driving, like almost rage or passion from Ellie that's blinding her to other things. And because we don't have that here, the motivations don't make a ton of sense. Where it's like, you're going to go, they find the building, right, that has the wolf thing on the dish, on the satellite dish. She's like, we're going to go in right now. And I'm like, that's dumb. And Dina's like, that's dumb. But what they do isn't much smarter, right? What they do isn't much more like seasoned soldier. I'm like, how about some recon? I don't know, stake it out for 24 hours. Just some really basic motivation things. Yeah, getting stuck in there. They go in there. The Seraphites have clearly killed a bunch of people very recently. Extremely recently, like they're probably still in there, and yet we're gonna go ahead and keep going, and all these things all leading all the way up to like, you got bit, I'm gonna kill you. Oh, okay, no, you're not dead. Okay, I love you immediately. Let's have sex on the floor of this hotel lobby. I was like, I would at least treat someone who had been bitten recently like they had a bad cold. Like, I would at least treat them that cautiously. I don't know if this is the moment that I want physical intimacy. Because all of it was like, I don't know. It felt video gamey to me in a way that was pretty bumpy. At the same time, as a TV show and as like entertainment, I'm compelled. I think some of the thematic work here is interesting. But yeah, I was kind of like split in my reactions to it, where like there were moments that I was like, oh hell yeah, The Last of Us, like Jeffrey Wright's got a monologue about these pans before he tortures this person. Yeah, brought me in a scene, tell me nothing about it, perfect, I love it. And then there's other stuff that I was just like, what, why? The pregnancy test expires so quickly, guys. There's no chance no chance. They all fail the same way. It doesn't matter how many you take. I just want some stuff like that doesn't hold any water for me. So let's get into it.
Yeah, I definitely want to talk about character motivations, because I think some of that is wrestling with the source material and it being a video game. And other parts of it are the aforementioned moving things around when things happen and where they happen. And maybe, Brian, you're about to get into some of this. But I do want to call out another thing I want to talk about is the way the scenes, like you just said, Trisha, we're dropped in, we don't understand anything, slowly revealing it. A lot of the scenes follow that structure, and a lot of it's in the directing. And I recognize the name, but I couldn't figure out who it was. But Kate Herron directed this, who's the creator of Loki, directed like the first season of Loki. And so it was cool to like see her, because I think a lot of the reveals are in the directing and how it's shot a lot of the time too. So I want to talk about that.
Yeah, especially that kitchen scene.
Totally.
Yeah. Even the sound design was really cool there, of like, I hear shackles. That's not good.
Yeah. Something bad is happening.
This is a really long conversation about these pans.
Just on screen. Yeah. Brian, how are you feeling?
Great with this episode. I really, part of the character motivation stuff is interesting, because whenever you are watching something that's adapted of something that you already know, or you're watching a movie for the third time, but you're showing it to someone else for the first time, it's like you already know the things that are going to happen, so you're just watching them play out, whereas somebody else is watching them for the first time being like, wait, why did they make that choice? You're like, oh, good question. I've been watching this movie for 30 years, so I never questioned why they did that, right?
Right.
So I think for me, it was like not so much questioning character motivations as much as just being like, well, I know what those are already. So now I'm just excited to see how they play out. And I was really happy with just the episode as a whole. It felt like a really good blend to me of world building. I feel like I know more about Isaac and the WLF than I did playing the game 3 times, you know. And Jeffrey Wright plays that character in the game for reference, but he
does?
like, yeah.
That's so cool. So not a surprise Jeffrey Wright for you.
Right,
A very
yeah.
expected Jeffrey Wright.
But we've
That's
already
awesome.
seen more of him in the show than we've seen than we see the entire game. He's like talked
cool.
about a lot in the game, and then he's in 2, maybe 3 scenes, and that's it. It definitely feels like they were going to do more with him, and then maybe that changed.
Time or budget. Or something.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
But very, very, very happy to see him back for the show. And then I just loved that we got some like really good action. And then I just really loved everything. Ellie and Dina. I want to talk about the take. I want to talk about the take on me scene, and I want to talk about the scene at the end. You know, where they get together. Because I think there's some things that Michael was alluding to that we can get into here in a second. But changes from the game where I was like, that was an okay change, but I don't know if. And then now this episode kind of felt to me like, that's why you did that, in a way that I found very satisfying. And yeah, I just was ultimately just watching everything being like, yeah, this is what I want this to be. Also, the newsroom scene felt like I was playing the game. I'm just like watching Ellie like stealth up to the guy, and I'm like, yeah, that's exactly where you hide, in that corner. Because again, the set is exactly the same, and it's wild to look at. Yeah. And I was like, oh yeah, there's a window back there. I know, like that's where they're gonna go. So yeah, just ultimately, this just felt like another really good example to me of like the things I love from the game are there. The things that are changed for a reason, and the things that are new feel like they're rounding out a world that I thought I knew, but now I get to know even more than before.
Nice. Yeah. Well, yeah. So let's dive in. I want to start with the end, basically, right? So that Dina Ellie scene.
Someone please tell me, you guys. I'm dying to know whatever you're talking about.
Yeah.
The difference. Go to it.
Right. Yeah. So basically, we've hinted at this before, but in the game, when Joel is getting stuck in the blizzard that ends up, he runs into Abby and then gets killed. Ellie is with Dina in the pot house, and they are snowed in together. And that's when they have their first kiss and kind of consummate, and the will they won't they quickly becomes they
rate
did.
Our kiss from last night. Oh, I give it a 6, like that whole thing, and then culminates in them like hooking up for the first time. Yeah,
right. So it's like the tent conversation.
Yep.
Was brought into the weed shop.
Right.
Like
Gotcha.
the day after the initial dance scene.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah. So you know about Dina and Ellie before Joel dies. Like that's like framing for like the story and them going to Seattle and all this kind of stuff. And so I think that highlights these interesting changes, right? So this relationship, instead of making it in episode 1, we see them go all the way to having this romantic relationship that they both have acknowledged. It's spread out a little bit to create the sort of classic tension of will they, won't they, and also to give us more plot points to be following, like different character arcs and evolutions to happen over time. And so I think that was really interesting to see play out in this season so far. And I think this is kind of the strategy that I'm seeing employed, is like they're taking scenes that are in the game and they're changing when and where they happen and the context a little bit. And a lot of the time, I think that's really good. What was interesting for me is the reveal where Ellie tells Dina, like, I am immune. And that's a little different. Well, it's actually pretty different, because in that earlier scene in the game where Ellie and Dina first kiss and then make out and all that stuff, part of their conversation is like showing off their scars. And Ellie reveals to Dina, oh yeah, this is like the scar. It's a burn that I did to hide my bite. I was bit by an infected. And so Ellie's trying to tell Dina like that she's immune in a very casual way. And Dina's just like, shut up, like stop like joking.
Well, I'd say it's not even casual. It's a little bit Ellie going, this is the moment I'm gonna actually tell her. And then Dina's response is like, yeah, get out of here, shut up. And then it never gets it. So then, as Michael's about to say,
right. So then when Ellie does get in the game, she doesn't get bitten. It's her face mask breaks because, again, in the game there's these spores. If you breathe the spores, you get infected also. So it's a similar kind of thing, but it happens differently. I think the change that they did was Dina's reaction to Ellie getting bitten was so much more intense,
right,
and believable, I thought.
Sure. Well, the thing that I thought you were going to say is then in the game, when she does tell her the second time, she says the same words she said the first time. And so there's a little bit in the performance of like, the thing I told you before, that's actually what happened. That was real. So it's kind of like that's been set up of like, oh, I did tell you. So now it's a little bit, as opposed to, I didn't tell you any of this. And then suddenly you have a bite mark and I'm going to have to kill you. And that's the end of everything.
Right.
But yeah, but in the game, they don't have this kind of overnight test thing, which I really liked in this episode, where and like even the whole sequence beginning with they get into the theater, she turns around and Dina has the gun pointed at her. I thought they really milked the situation for a lot of good drama that wasn't necessarily in that game sequence. So I understand the choice, and I think it is a good choice, and I liked how it also pushed both of them to reveal their big secret, or their current big secret, and that did feel cathartic. I do agree, Trisha, that's a bit of a leap to go from that kind of catharsis to like intense sexual energy. That's a little bit of a leap, but I know you kind of ride the wave, I guess. It kind of works.
Well, it's just like, I don't know. For me, I agree. I actually really like all of that. I kind of like the way that she, like, you know, even just the choice of like, I'm going to throw my arm at this like infected and they're going to bite me. And in full view of Dina, she understands, like, and then having to explain. I love the overnight test. I love the whole thing right up until Dina says, Ellie, I'm pregnant. And then the response to both of these life-changing, absolutely wild reveals is just, let's make out as hard as we possibly can. Without the context of a relationship either, right? Like, this is the first actual acknowledgement of, like, we love each other and want to be together, essentially, on both sides. And I don't know. It was just, like, too much all at once for me. Like, even if it had been, I don't know, like, take 5 extra seconds, sit down and go like, holy crap. Like, both of you just sit down and take a minute and go like, now what? This is also intense. This is also weird. Then, like, maybe let's, you know, like, move on from that and realize that we want to be together because life is so short, right? You know, because that's often what happens, right? Like, in intense situations like this, it's not a crazy leap to immediately go to, we could be dead any second, let's like be together while we can. It just felt, again, very TV or movie-ish, into like cascade of reveals and then romantic plot action happening.
I honestly, I think you could have done a really tiny rewrite where you take a little bit of their morning after conversation and move it to that moment of Dina saying, I've been crying all night. I've been so scared because I was starting to imagine a future with you and us having a kid together. And like, that's a bridge to be like, what, that's how you think of me? Holy crap. And like, that can lead to that romantic intensity, but it's kind of saved for the morning after.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just interesting identifying this trade-off that is happening because they chose to save this kind of, they finally get together moment for this reveal, which in the game has the, Ellie says, I'm not infected, and Dina reveals she's pregnant, and now they're also doing, and now they're in love, and like doing it, and it's just interesting, that trade-off.
It's easier to have like a sex scene when you're like relaxing and smoking weed in a weed shop. That's a more natural, sexy place.
Well, and I think that's where like the sort of meta of it all is like me as the game person being like, oh, I really missed the weed shop scene. I wish we got that. But at the same time, you know, I was thinking about this episode and I was thinking the rule of thumb for adaptation should probably be, if you're going to change something, make it the same or better. right? So I think a lot of times when people complain about changes in adaptation, it's because like the thing that they love was just taken away, and it didn't make the thing better than if it would have been there, or as interesting or whatever. And I remember feeling like that scene not being in the show was like, okay, it's not that the show was worse for it, but it is that I'm missing it a little. And then we get a little bit of it in the tent, and I was like, yeah, you kind of got it, whatever. And then I think for me, it was again, only the meta. It was like realizing, oh, you saved it so that we could do it all in this explosive moment. I'm immune. I've been wanting to tell you that for years. I'm pregnant. I've been wanting to tell you that for days. Oh my God, I love you so much. You know what I mean? Just that kind of thing. Like the energy of that, the sort of the bird's eye view down, looking down at that. I was like, oh, that's really cool. It's really cool to save their kiss from before they leave to now we're already here and we're in this very intense moment. And that's where it kind of all explodes out. The execution, I'm not disagreeing with you guys, but I did at least appreciate why that change was made.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and always, not to belabor a point, but when you take a big dramatic swing at something, you know, you're gonna have some people it doesn't work for and some people it really works for. And so just wanting to identify, like, I don't fault that as a choice. It's a big dramatic swing, you know, it's a kind of big like water cooler moment of like, oh, they finally got together and this and this. I do think an alternative way to do it, other than the small rewrites we've been identifying, would be if you have these potential obstacles. We've talked before about the conflict between Dina and Ellie and how it hasn't felt substantial enough. Well, Dina being pregnant actually could be an obstacle. Like if the show would use it that way, right? She's pregnant with someone else's kid and somebody that she does have a genuine feeling for, right? It could be a situation where if you wanted to, you could have had her and Ellie get together in the tent when they're traveling. And then she finds out the next day she's pregnant. And it could be a situation where she doesn't know what she's going to do about that. And maybe she pulls away from Ellie. And Ellie doesn't know why. And then there's weird conflict where Ellie's like, what? I thought we were together now. And Dina's like, no, maybe we're not actually, because she has this secret. You could, if you give a character a secret and like a potential other road or something they could do with it, you can use it for conflict if you're trying to introduce conflict in a relationship. Now, what might be going on with this revenge plot could also be a source of conflict between Ellie and Dina, but isn't. So now for, you know, higher up reasons that I don't know yet, it could be that they don't need conflict in this relationship. And that's why there hasn't been any. I acknowledge that could be true. And this is an action show. So there's plenty of external conflict and external pressure, you know, collapsing in onto Ellie and Dina, potentially. But like so far, none of it has really created a material blockade between the two of them. And so that's just not where the source of drama is. Like even the last little half-hearted, well, you don't have to come now. Things are different now, Dina. I was like, there's no way Dina's not going to come now. Because it's just not what the show has been teaching me about these two characters. They are not in conflict with each other, deeply, truly in conflict with each other. And also, the TV show doesn't seem interested thematically in giving Dina a different position on the theme of revenge and violence and these cycles of violence as we've identified. I thought that might happen in this episode, and it doesn't. Dina is not here to provide an alternative take on the theme, and she is not here to provide anything except for stakes for Ellie. Dina and her unborn child are providing stakes. That is a dramatic use of that character, but it's not doing anything beyond that as far as I can tell.
Yeah, even just putting my TV viewer hat on, and truly I'm forgetting a lot of even what happens in the game, like for a little while here. So I think the lack of conflict is interesting. And I was feeling that, like there were several moments where it was like, oh, this is the scene where Ellie's going to say, we go forward. And Dina's like, no, that's a bad idea. And then they kind of like are fine and they work it out and their relationship is good and they move forward together. And that's kind of cool. Like I like the subverting of, kind of conventional drama tropes and conflict tropes, but I don't think that is sustainable for a story. Like, we need interpersonal conflict. Alex, I think you were saying in a previous episode, like, part of what was so great about Ellie and Joel is like their conflict and that, like, you know, frustration, and they're both stubborn and all this stuff. And so I think it was weird to me that both Dina and Ellie are getting along really well, even after the reveal of you're pregnant with somebody else's baby. Like, they roll right into, like, I'm going to be a father. This is great, which is cute and cool. But then there's also, as we said at the beginning of the episode, like, where is Joel is a note that I wrote at one point. It's like, I don't feel like Ellie needs this revenge. And if they're going to make decisions like bring the pregnant girlfriend into the war zone, I need to feel like she needs that.
Yeah, I think what this episode really succeeded in doing was make me buy in and believe in the love story. I think that we can talk about the what's the name of the song?
Take on me.
The take on me scene. Just the performances in that scene were so wonderful, and I really did believe something special was happening in that moment, you know, between the two of them. And so I think I agree that the conflict isn't there that you could milk from the situation, but I did appreciate it being just a genuinely sweet love story arc in this episode, ending with the kind of almost youthful optimism of like, I'm going to be a dad. You know, it makes me care about the characters and re-engage with the show in some ways, where it's like there really are stakes that I can care about here. But then it's very frustrating, because then I'm like, wait, but then why are you still going? Like, you're gonna be a dad and you're so happy and you're in love and everything's pretty good now. Like you won. So like, turn around, go back to Jackson. We're done here. And you're right. We didn't have that presence of Joel through the whole episode, nagging at Ellie, being that just kind of like ever present drive that, you know, I think in the game, what's being suggested is this drive for revenge is, you know, ruinous, and it's making you push forward even when you by all accounts you should turn back. And we don't have that feeling of that drive through this episode.
Yeah. I like that you guys are saying there's not enough conflict between the characters when literally one of them had to convince the other one not to kill her.
Right. But and that's why that scene was so good, because it was like, wow, we're at peak conflict here and it feels amazing.
Right. But
it's
I agree
not ideological conflict. It's not thematic conflict.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a sort of like, let's take a little conflict, like side quest, and then we'll come back to like no conflict. Right. And I am conflicted, for lack of a better word, about that sometimes, where it's like, I do genuinely love when I get to watch characters who just like to be around each other, and like that is their safe space. This is our warm fire, our cozy place we can go to before we then go out and face the world, you know. And I do like that about Ellie and Dina. But yeah, I agree that especially now, while we're just spending time with just the two of them, then it's like we expect to see a little bit more conflict between the characters.
Oh, just to reiterate what Alex was saying, I was literally yelling at the TV, like, you're happy, go home.
Right.
Go home and live. Like, it's so bonkers to me. And it could have been so easy to have Dina say that. Like, Ellie, things are different now. Let's both go. Like, what would Joel have wanted? Let's honestly take a minute and stop and reconsider this. Even if Ellie decides to plow ahead, just having that moment of like, what if we just turned around and went home?
Yeah.
It just has to be sound internal logic.
And I do wonder if we could have peppered in, we set up earlier in the season, Abby is kind of haunted by these memories of the hospital. She's waking up from kind of nightmares in her sleeping bag. If we had a recurring theme of Ellie, and Ellie did wake up with like a PTSD reaction in the hospital, the episode after.
Very effective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, if that was an ongoing thing that we were using dramatically to show like she is haunted by what she saw, like this trauma is so intense in her body, and she thinks the only way to get rid of it or to like soothe herself is to kill this person. I think we need some of that along with all this happy, wonderful stuff with Dina.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And in terms of seeing Joel, literally seeing him like flashback territory. I'm really glad that we haven't yet. I feel like we need a few episodes to miss him, because if the cold open of episode 3 is a flashback with Joel, I think as an audience we just go, oh, there he is, he's fine, you know. And instead it's like, I want to miss him. But to everything you're saying, I want to see, and I said this last week too, I want to see Ellie seething and uncomfortable and everything, right? I don't think, I very strongly believe we will get there, and maybe this is a little bit of a calm before the storm, where it's almost like they're lulling us into a sense of like, they're just gonna go have some fun, kill some people like times, you know. Which like in both episodes now they've joked about it, like, well, let's go kill some folk, you
people
know.
To kill.
But yeah, I agree that it's like, I would love to see that drive, and I would love to see that drive put a little conflict between them, like you know, you guys just said, of the sort of like Dina being like, hey, maybe we go home, and Ellie being like, no, I have to do this, and then Dina making that choice to be like, all right, I'm with you. It has more weight to it. It doesn't just feel like together, hold hands, right? So yeah, it doesn't bother me. At the same time, 100% agree.
Even thematically, it would be stronger for Dina to not want to go, but then out of loyalty and love for Ellie to go. That's much more of like a dark
to her belief system.
Choice.
She's choosing violence in support of her belief system, which is what the Seraphites are doing, which is what Isaac is doing. You know, it's exactly all thematically connected.
And all it would require is a little bit of finesse in the dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you actually don't have to choose any different scenes than the ones that you have. You can just rework the dialogue in the scenes that you have to hit home the point that Ellie can't walk away and Dina won't walk away because Ellie can't walk away.
Mm-hmm.
You could establish that pretty quickly and clearly.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see what happens next, because I do feel confident that the showrunners know what they're doing and are making conscious choices. And, you know, I think there's enough pain from the loss of Joel to fill up the tank. I'm going to keep going with this car metaphor, apparently.
Wow,
like,
okay.
To with the fuel to like get me through this episode of like, I didn't feel it in this moment, but I know that like it was traumatic and Ellie needs this and blah, blah, blah. But I feel like that's running out. I feel like kind of all of the fuel is running out. And that makes me actually really terrified for the next episode, because there's just a little too much happy happening at the end of this. And that's usually not a good sign for the future.
But we haven't talked much about, you know, the Isaac scenes or, you know, the Seraphites. You know, I think there's a lot of world building that I was more into than I thought I would be. You know, I think when we saw the glimpse of the Seraphites and, you know, the shot of like, they have a whole tank and armies, I'm like, okay. But I found all the world building really interesting in this episode. And so in some ways it's kind of like, yay, happy love story with Dina and Ellie. That was really cute. But as far as like the drama and the things I'm interested in right now, it's actually the world and these other characters. And I'm excited to get to know them more.
Yeah. We called it up with that scene that intros Isaac was really, really good. And there was a little bit of me that was like, all right, we're going to do a little monologue. He's going to like, he's talking about this, but he's actually talking about that. And like, that was still like good. What I really liked was when the pressure built up and it became the sort of more deeper thematic thing where the guy who's getting tortured is saying like, we're going to win. Isaac's like, we have guns and hospitals. What do you have? And he's like, every day one of you leaves to join us, but we never leave to join you. Like, I thought that was just really, really good and getting at this kind of deeper meaning. It obviously unsettles Isaac, the character, sets him off, and he has to run away and get his pan, and I'm going to torture you again. And he turns around, the guy's just holding out his other, like, that was all really powerful, meaningful, like great, like writing and execution. And so I agree. Those parts are some of the best parts, I think, in this most recent episode.
Yeah, and just the thematic discussion there is so rich. Like, how do you fight like religious ideology, you know, these fundamentalist kind of beliefs? You cannot beat that with conventional weapons. Like, that is so much more powerful than your kind of like modern army that you have.
And I love the show is always really good at highlighting like the gray areas of the morality of the world, right? Because it's not like these wolf, these former Fedra turned wolf people are great people either. They're extremely not great people either, right? We have the torture scene with Jeffrey Wright and Isaac and that guy. And then we also have that younger officer who like says like, good, he got what he deserved, right? Like
animal, like literally
animal,
dehumanized.
yeah,
And,
exactly.
and that's so great too, because all you need are those two scenes to show how far
His
they've
change.
fallen.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
like at the beginning, you know, Isaac was recruiting him because it's like, hey, you still have some hope of not being an awful person. And here we are 11 years later, and you're an awful person.
Right. Exactly right. Yeah. So all of that is really rich and interesting. And yeah, the mystery of exactly what has been going on here still has me leaning forward. I'm really interested in all of it, and very scared by all of it. So it's very effective in that way. Yeah, I thought all of that was incredibly well done.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, I think you were saying it earlier, Brian, but like right, because in the game we get a little time with Isaac and it feels like that time was less meaningful than what we've already seen here in the show. And that's getting me excited as a game viewer that's also a TV viewer. Is like, I think some of these themes might be better explored through television and through this medium. Not all, but I think some are. And getting private moments with characters that you're not playing as, even just Dina walking through the store buying things and you see her, she sees something, she doesn't tell Ellie, like we get to have a secret with Dina. Like I think the show is smart about how it's using that perspective to bring us into other headspaces that I think lets it explore the themes from more angles.
Yeah, something we should mention if we haven't yet is in the games, you are always in the POV of the character that you are playing as. So, you know, when Sarah in the beginning of the game, the first episode, it's like she doesn't know what Joel is out doing. She only knows when Joel comes home and something happened out there, right? So we don't get private scenes with Isaac or private scenes with, you know, all these other characters. We just get the characters that you are playing as. And in the show, obviously they can do, that's not a restriction anymore. We can round out the world. We can say, let's introduce Isaac. Let's do a flashback. Let's have this character. Let's have, you know, Gail and Tommy have a scene together. Here's a character from the game and a brand new character. They're going to have a scene together, like watching baseball. I'm just, that scene, I was like, if you sat me down in front of the TV and I had no idea Last of Us was being made into a show, how far would I have to get in the scene before I'm like, did she say Joel and then say Ellie? Wait a minute, what? But yeah, so that's an interesting thing. The other thing is the Seattle Day One sequence of the game is a very open area, whereas most of these games are very linear. And you go and you can explore things. So the music store scene is entirely optional. You could completely miss it. And I think it's such a beautiful...
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's really crazy because it's a really good example of sort of narrative beats and storytelling where without that scene... you still have all the beats you need in the game. You have all the beats you need to know that Dina and Ellie are in love. They've already hooked up at this point. You know, they're already basically together. But with that scene, it just makes the relationship that much stronger and that much deeper. The show, it's not optional. You're going to see that scene and they're going to do it exactly like the game. But we're going to make that be the moment where Dina is like, this is actually where I'm really 100% falling in love with Ellie. And Isabella Merced's performance is insane. Like, it's so good. I mean, both of them, obviously, it's so good. And Craig Mazin on the Last of Us podcast said, when we do an action scene, and we're all going to eat this up, I promise. So when we do an action scene, the action is there to either reveal information about a relationship or to change a relationship, which is what we talk about all the time. Yes. Action scenes should be doing something, not just being action scenes. And they said the same thing about this. If you're going to have someone sing a song for 3 minutes, you know, like basically an entire song, that scene better have a function. We talk about this in musicals too, right? What is the actual function of this? It's not just there to sound good and be pretty. And we see a change we already have seen basically, but we see the sort of like the full ending of that change that Dina, I think, has been going through already, which then culminates at the end of the episode. So I just all felt that was done. I felt all of that was done really well.
Yeah, definitely agree. And when I was rewatching the first season a couple of weeks ago, I think in the first episode they turn on the radio and Take On Me is playing, and I was like, that's a little setup for that's gonna come back. And so it was cool to see
Nice.
that completed here. Yeah, okay, well, yeah, a lot of things happened. I think we're all in agreement things are feeling better, and we're still hooked, and we want to know what's going to happen next. Bumpy character motivations at times, but like we're going somewhere, and I'm very excited to see what happens next. So this has been our conversation about episode 4. To make sure you do not miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and go ahead and leave a like for the algorithm gods, or head to the Beyond the Screenplay Patreon, where you can follow and get all the episodes there as well. We want to say a big thank you, as always, to the patrons that make this show possible. If you become a patron, you will get access to our season 1 recap reflection that we did as an exclusive for patrons, where we talked about the whole first season of The Last of Us. That was really fun and really interesting. So that and lots of other cool stuff is over on the Beyond the Screenplay Patreon. We want to say a big thank you to our producer, Vince Major, to our editor, Mike Worth, and the whole Nebula Studios team. I'm Michael Tucker. I've been joined today by Trisha Arand, Brian Bittner, and Alex Calleros, and we will see you next week for Season 2, Episode 5. We still don't know the titles. I'm always sad that we get here and I don't have
I mean,
the title.
there's a strong chance it's called Day 2.
It's possible. It's quite possible.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.